Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today we're going to be painting Beach Flight Kite, and I'm going to be sipping on a little spiked seltzer. And if you do enjoy this video, I hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, chrome yellow, fluorescent orange, phthalo green, Mars black, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, and cobalt blue. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my materials today, I have a white piece of chalk, which you could use any kind of drawing utensil you'd like, but I'm going to be using a piece of chalk for today. And I have two brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 4 round brush, and I will refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. Of course, you can switch those up if you'd like as well, but that's what I'll be using. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I do provide you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the fancy palette and the paints and the brushes and all that good stuff. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so for my first step, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be painting my sky. I'll be using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are white, yellow, orange, and blue. And I'm kind of envisioning this to be like dusk. So the sun has, in my opinion, probably already set, but that still has that light glow to the sky. So that's where my head is going. I've got the right side of the canvas a little bit lighter and the dark side, or the left side, a little bit darker. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to give myself a couple of markers, because I only want to bring my sky down about 2/3 of the way down my canvas. So I'm just going to put a little bit of my orange on my brush. And to find where 2/3 is, you can visually kind of pick your halfway point. Then you can pick halfway between that and the bottom of your canvas. And the third is somewhere in the middle of there. So then I'm just going to kind of make myself a little marker. Then I can use my brush as a measuring tool to see how high I did that, and go over on the other side and make myself another little marker. So somewhere in through here. And they don't have to be perfect. It's just going to give you a visual stopping point as you do that sky. So how I'm going to start this is I already have a little bit of the orange on my brush. I'm going to pick up a touch of yellow and some white. So I have all 3 colors on my brush at the same time. I'm going to be applying my paint with a left to right type of brush stroke. So that way I can have some light spots and some dark spots, and I can have it all looking like it's blending together. I will get it a little bit darker as I go down towards the bottom, and again a little bit lighter over on the right hand side. So I'm using these 3 colors right now kind of in an arbitrary fashion, so it almost looks like maybe there's some soft clouds floating by of sorts. But when I get down towards the bottom, I am going to be getting it darker and darker, so I will be using less white and more of the other colors, which would be the yellow, the the orange, and then when I get down to the very bottom, I'm going to be using a bit of blue, and you'll see what happens when I do that. I think that's where the magic comes into the sky, is when we put that touch of blue down at the bottom. So right now, again, I'm just using my orange and yellow and a bit of the white, and right now you can see I'm kind of starting to go a little bit darker and darker as I go down towards the bottom of the canvas. And you can get this to go as light or as dark as you want. Every sky is different from the other one, so what it looks like tonight might not look like, it might never look like that again. It'll always have different variations depending on the different kinds of clouds and things of that nature that are happening within the atmosphere. So you can certainly get yours to do whatever you want, but I'm getting it a little bit darker now as we're going down towards the bottom of the canvas, or the bottom of my sky. And again, I'm just using this long left to right kind of crisscross type brush stroke, so that way the colors will overlap each other in kind of a natural way. And I do tend to go back into the previous section in order to get the colors to overlap with one another. I am using a thin-bodied student grade paint, so my paint tends to stay on the more moist side for a bit longer than if you have a heavy-bodied paint. So just know that if your paint is not as fluid as mine, you can certainly add a little bit of liquid medium to it to get it on the more fluid type side, or you can add a touch of water to it. I do caution you when it comes to using water though, because water can very easily lift your paint right off of your canvas. So if you do plan on using a little bit of water, just be on the more cautious side. And now that I've got the entire sky colored in, I'm going to add a bit of blue to my brush. I'm not washing my brush. I'm adding a bit of blue with the remnants of the other colors on my brush, and I'm going to get it to blend in at the bottom. So this might, depending on if you have a little bit more yellow, it'll turn a little bit on the greener side. If you have a little bit of the orange, it may turn a little bit more on the purpley side. So you can certainly adjust it to however you want, but it ends up looking like there's that atmospheric kind of haze at the bottom of the sky, which I think is very pretty. So I am blending it in so it just kind of goes down in a natural fashion, and then you can just kind of keep tweaking your sky until you feel like you've got it as bright or as subtle as you want. And then we will be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got this on here, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer for our sand and our water. I'm going to be using the same neutral color as my base coat for both of those areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using white, brown, and black. And I'm really just going for a medium grayish brown color. You could pre-mix this on your palette if you want to, but I really like to have nice natural tones within my paintings, so I'm going to mix it on my canvas, so that way I will naturally have some lighter spots and some darker spots. So I'm going to pick up some white, brown, and black, more white than brown and black, because I know that the brown and black will take over on my canvas. I'm not terribly concerned about a super straight horizon line at this point. What I'm more concerned about is just kind of getting a nice base coat. I'm going to be using a variety of brush strokes. I'll probably be using kind of like a circular type brush stroke to get them to blend in with one another. And this is about the tone that I'm going for. So if you want yours to be a little bit lighter or darker, that's going to work as well. But just keep in mind, we're going for dusk, so it's almost going to look more natural if it's on the darker side. So I'm going for that type of like sand in the shadows kind of color, and I will be using that as well on my water. What will be my water is going to have this as its under color to it, or its base color to it. So again, I'm not terribly concerned about this being perfectly executed or even having a full coat. I'm okay if I can see some of my brush strokes at this point. I'm really just looking for something that's going to give me a nice neutral color to it. I do know that I'm going to have my water is going to be on the left hand side and my sand dunes are going to be on the right hand side. So when I'm on the left, I will be trying to, in essence, kind of start my horizon line on my water. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth in a quick kind of way along that horizon line. I will show you a trick when we get to the water on how to make that nice and straight. But right now I just kind of started it so that way I have a place to work with when I do execute the water. And then I'm just going to kind of go over towards that right hand side. When I get to the right hand side at the horizon, I'm going to be making it bump up a little bit to start the land area of my sand dunes. So this is good in through here, and you can see I've got different, like some areas are a little bit more brown than others, some areas are a little bit more gray than others. So here's where I'm going to just kind of bump this up a little bit to give me some sort of start or making of the silhouette part of the sand dunes, or the shape, I guess I could say. And I'm really just taking my brush and just bumping it up a little bit in a really kind of carefree type way, and then I'll get it to gradually meet in with where I'm going to have my water. And maybe this can go a little bit higher. There's some pretty tall sand dunes. I am in Massachusetts, and we have by the shoreline at Cape Cod, there is a bunch of these beautiful sand dunes that I have visited many times, and they definitely can be very tall or very short. So I'm going to go for some tall ones off in the distance. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer on here, you can wash and dry your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are creating the area for our water. So this is where the water is going to run into the sand, and also the area that is way far off in the distance. So it's our water area. I'm going to use my large brush, and I do want to forewarn you that before you start this step that you have this bottom portion of your canvas dry. So you could either take an extra long break if you'd like to, or you can use some type of fanning method with your paper towel or blow on it, or you could do what I did and just take out a blow dryer and just blow dry it. So whatever way, maybe yours is already dry by now, but whatever method you need to do to get this area dry, it will definitely help you in the next step. So what I'm going to in essence be doing, I'm using a bunch of colors. I'm going to be using the colors from my sky, which are white, orange, yellow, and blue. And I'm also going to be using a bit of the phthalo green color. I'm going to be down where the water meets the sand, creating the thin layer of water that in essence is kind of reflecting those colors in the sky. And then I'm just going to get it to gradually kind of fade into where it's going to be darker and bluer and greener off in the distance. I'm going to start with the lighter areas, and when I work my way up towards the back, I'll give you a little bit of a tip on how to make that line straighter without using a ruler. So I'm going to be using this big brush. I'm going to start with a little bit of white, yellow, and orange on my brush at the same time to get, in essence, the outline of where the water is going to meet the sand. So I've got my brush, I'm picking up a tiny bit of white, a tiny bit of yellow, and a tiny bit of pink. I do not need a lot of paint on my brush at this point. You could even, if you feel like you have too much, you could pat it on your paper towel. You can always add more. It's kind of tough to take it off once it's on there. And it's okay if you see the color underneath as well. So I'm going to start down here in the bottom left-hand corner, and I'm just going to be moving my brush left to right to give myself a bit of a soft area that is resembling the colors up top. And I'm going to go all the way to the left-hand side. You can move your brush in a circular fashion. I'm almost using like a dry brush type technique. This way I can control how much paint is being utilized, if I want it to be lighter or darker. If you have a lot of orange on this side, then you'll want to put a lot of orange in the reflective water. If you have a lot of pink over here, then you'll put a lot of pink in the reflective water over here. And the water itself that's coming into the sand doesn't have to be perfect. It can certainly have a little bit of movement to it. It doesn't have to be straight lines. You can see I'm really just kind of manipulating my brush to rub these colors on here. I don't need it to be perfect. I can have little areas of the sand that are in between. So I'm kind of just giving myself a little bit of an outline, so to speak, on this right hand side to where the water is meeting the sand, and I'm just kind of getting it on here. I'm not using a lot of paint. You could also use a bit of water on your brush too. If you're finding that you've got too much paint on your brush, I think I want a little inlet back behind one of these sand dunes over here. So I'm going to add some in through here. So you can see that I'm using lighter colors. Where it meets the water over here, the thicker water, I'm going to be adding more darker colors. But right now I'm just kind of getting the outline, so to speak, over here where I want it to meet my sand. And I'm not using a whole heck of a lot of paint. That's my trick right now, is not a lot of paint. I've got a bunch of orange up here in the sky, so I kind of want to get a little bit more orange down in through here, maybe a touch of yellow too to represent what's going on up top in the sky. So again, you can really have fun with this right edge. This is where it's going to be meeting your sand, and it's going to be nice and reflective of what's happening in the sky. So, and we're going to be doing additional layers to it as well. So if you don't get it perfect at this point, don't worry about it. We'll be adding some additional bits of information as we go through the painting process. But right now I'm just kind of getting it on here, and I'm using this almost a circular type of brush stroke. And as I go into this, the watery area, I'm going to start utilizing a little bit of blue on my brush and my white. And as I get up towards that horizon line, I will be utilizing even more of the blue and the green and less white, because I want mine to be a bit darker as it gets up towards that horizon area. So right now I'm just kind of getting these to work their way into each other, and I want them to have light spots and dark spots. So I'm getting into my darker areas here. So I just put a bit of my phthalo green on my brush, and I'm going to give you my little tip on how to have a semi-straight horizon line without using a ruler. So you want to eyeball where your highest point is. And I feel like this is a little bit higher than here, but it could be an optical illusion for me. But I'm going to just kind of make myself a little bit of a mark with my dark color. I will use my brush as my measuring tool and come over to the left-hand side. Oh, I was wrong. My left-hand side is taller. So I actually have to readjust this. I'm going to put this mark, my tallest one was over here, measure it with my brush, come over to the right-hand side, and it's a little bit higher. So you want that marker on the left and the right to be at the same height. And then as you do this, I'm going to be pushing my brush into my canvas so it has a nice flat tip, and I keep my eye on the prize, which is my other marker. And you might have to reload your brush. Like I feel like I need a little bit more paint on my brush, so you can pick up the blue or the green, and I'm just going to kind of keep going right across until I meet that other marker, and then you just kind of keep adjusting it until you feel that you have it as straight as you want it to be. And then once you've got it as straight as you want it to be, then you're just going to start adding bits of those darker colors. You could use brown, you could use black, you could use blue, you could use green. I just want it to be pretty darn dark back here, so I'm using blue, brown, black, green, and just putting my brush left to right with these little kind of dash type marks. And then I'm going to get it to blend into the lighter area. So I'll, in a second, start picking up a bit of white paint, and that's going to get it to blend in. So I, in essence, used every single color on my palette for this step. And again, if it doesn't come out perfect on this step, keep in mind that this was just the first layer of it. So we will be adding some foamy waves coming in and some shadows and all kinds of other cool stuff. So just know that this was the first layer, and then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this all nice and completed, and again, you can have your areas overlap with one another if you want to. Once you have this nice and as fully executed as you want it to, you can wash and dry this large brush. I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. I've got good color variations. It's rolling into my lighter areas. Excellent. So I'm going to wash and dry this. So hard to stop. I am going to wash and dry this and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our sand dunes and any little shrubbery or anything that you want to rocks or anything that you want to add to this. So I'm going to have a little area of sand dunes that are off in the distance that are going to be just at the top of my land area. And then I'll have another area that looks to be a little bit closer and in focus. So I'm going to use my large brush. On the dunes in the back, I'm going to be using brown, black, and white. And then on this little strip that I'm going to put in here, I'm also going to incorporate some of my orange with the brown, black, and white, and it'll give it a more in focus type look to it. So I'm going to tackle these ones back here. So I know that there's going to be just shadows and highlights throughout these duney areas, and there's little bits of sand, and then there's almost going to be like the silhouette of the shrubbery because it is dusk, so we don't have a lot of light that will be shined upon them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a touch of brown and a touch of black on my brush at the same time, and I'm just using the little tip of my brush right now to get these areas on here, and I'm really just going to tap and wiggle my brush a little bit just to there's that song again. So I'm just creating these little peaks and valleys to these by utilizing the texture on the tip of my brush. I am going to get it to go a little bit darker with more of the black and the brown on my brush as it recedes off into the distant horizon. And again, you could have yours with more energy than mine. You could have yours having more darkness or more lightness to it, but just having these bits of dark spots and light spots with the formation that we have is going to provide the illusion of these sand dunes off in the distance. I'm going to pick up a bit more brown on my brush right now to emulate it coming down into the shadow where it's going to come and touch the sand down below, the flat sand that we're that our kite flyer is running on. So I'm using a bit more brown on my brush right now as opposed to the black, and then I'm going to put just a teeny tiny bit of white on my brush, on my dirty brush, just to give myself a bit of the illusion of even maybe a bit lighter sand down at the bottom, because I want to make sure that the illusion is there that we've got some flat sand on the bottom here, and then it kind of goes up into those roly-poly little sand dune hills. And you can keep tweaking this as much as you want. I suppose you could put a bit of the color from the sky if you wanted it to reflect in there a bit, or just kind of add some more bits of highlights throughout there. So just have fun with it. And then I'm going to work on the other area. I didn't wash my brush. I'm going to pick up some brown and some of my orange on my brush at the same time, just to kind of get this into motion. I'm going to have it maybe starting somewhere down in through here. And again, I'm just going to wiggle my brush a little bit and give myself an uneven top to it. Maybe these are little shrubs or something. You can imagine them to be whatever you'd like them to be, with these little grassy pieces. Maybe they're catching the maybe the tips of them are catching some of the color from the setting sun, or the sun that has already gone down. I'm going to pick up a touch of black now to get some of these bottoms to have little shadows underneath. And again, this is more of an impressionistic type style that I'm going for right now. I'm not really looking for firm details. I really just want to give the viewer the idea that there is something other than just sand on this little beach that we're working with. So in order to do that, I just need to add some highlights and some shadows. I think I know that this is going to get a bit darker as it dries. So I think I didn't say I was going to use yellow, but I'm going to use a bit of yellow and white also on my brush, just to kind of tap in a little something extra on the tips of these little shrubs in through here. And of course, you can certainly have fun with whatever you want to do to bring those a little bit more in focus. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beach dunes and all of the little pieces of rocks or whatever else that you want to include on your beach, you can wash and dry. Just want a couple little more dirty spots, I guess. Wash and dry this medium or the large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our water area. So I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'll be using all of my colors again. So what I'm in essence going to be doing is adding highlights and shadows, or shadows underneath my waves or where the water's coming in, highlights just to make sure that we've got as much brightness as we want, and also little waves that are coming in. So that in essence is a series of shadows and highlights throughout the whole thing. So how I'm going to start it is I'm going to start it with my shadows. I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using black and brown paint with water on my brush in order to create the shadows. So when I'm thinking shadows, I'm thinking they're going to be on the opposite side of where I perceive the light source to be. So I'm perceiving my light source to be over in that direction. So I'm going to have my shadows underneath or towards the bottom of my canvas. So even if I have like a wave that's coming in, I'll still keep that shadow towards me on this side. And then my highlights are going to be on the, not necessarily on the other side of the water, but they'll be on the other side of the shadowed area. And that'll make it look three-dimensional. You'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to take a tiny bit of brown, and you might want more brown or more black depending on where your comfort zone is when it comes to doing this. And I'm going to take my brush and I just dip it in my dirty water. And then my trick, because I don't want to have a lot of paint on my brush, is I'm just going to kind of pat it on my paper towel. You can always add more paint, but it's tough to take it away. So when you're doing a step like this where you just want it to be subtle but have some good impact, just use very little bit of paint on your brush with a bit of water, and then if you need it to be more powerful, you can add more to it. So I have my watered down mixture on my brush. I'm going to take it and I'm going to rub it with just a little bit of pressure on the bottom edge of that water that is shooting off to the right hand side. And it doesn't have to be 100%. Like, you don't have to outline the whole thing, because maybe this little area doesn't get it. Maybe, you know, obviously the stuff on the top side doesn't get it, but the stuff underneath would get it a little bit. You can bring it in towards the edge if you want, because maybe this is higher in height than this area is. I'm going to put some in through this area, and the key is I don't want my lines to be too thick, which is why I'm just utilizing a little bit with water on my brush, and they don't all just have to go horizontal. You can have some in a diagonal type way. And because I'm using a nice bristle brush, which is nice and firm on the end, I can kind of push this paint up into where I want the shadowy areas to be. I want some waves coming in, so I want some shadows underneath some waves. So I'm just going to kind of take and put my waves wherever I want them to be. You might want yours up further in the waterway. You might want yours more intense than mine. I'm adding more paint to my brush right now because I feel like I'm running out, and I'm just going to kind of put a few coming in through this shoreline, and wherever I'm putting these darker areas, in a minute I'm going to be putting a wave that's going to come and kind of intensify that little bit of a shadow that I've just done. So that's looking pretty good to me. So this to me is like the wave has come in, and then it's receded, and then it's coming in, and it just gives you almost these layers of watery reflections and shadows and all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to have my girl right about here, so I'm not terribly concerned about this area being perfect. I might want a couple of other little shadows back here. So now that I've got my shadows in place, if your brush is overloaded with black and brown, just wash and dry it. And then I'm just giving it a good squeeze in my paper towel, and now I'm doing my highlights. So for me, my highlights are going to be on, they're still going to be kind of on the bottom edge, because the light is over there. It would catch this area, and you could put some on the other side as well. And again, less is more. I'm going to have hardly any paint on my brush. I will be utilizing in this wet sand area more of my sky colors, and then when I get into here, I'll be utilizing more of the watercolors with a little bit of the sky color. So right now I have white with a little bit of orange on my brush, and I'm just going to make sure that I have these edges as bright as I want them to be. So you might end up, oh, and I hold my brush weird when I do this. I'm actually holding it in a downward motion, so I'm kind of pushing my paint toward that shadowy area, and this is how I'm going to get that illusion of it being three-dimensional in through there. And then that's right along that edge in through there. And if you want a little bit more of your sky color, again, I feel like there should be more pink in through here, so I'm just going to keep tweaking it until I feel that I have the intensity that I want. And if you want your sand to look like it is rolling or meeting with your water, your sand and your water meet a little bit better, you can certainly pick up some of your sand color and just get these two areas to blend in a little bit more. And your sand color was black, brown, and white. So this doesn't have to be a firm edge where the water meets the sand. It can certainly just almost roll into it and get it, making it look like it's on the wetter side. So variations in your color is really going to help to sell the story of what's going on in the sky and making it look much more reflective and natural. And again, you can keep tweaking these. I'm just watching where I've got some yellow up here, so I feel like I should have a little bit more yellow in through here. I'm working on this wet, I'm calling the wet sand area, but you might find yourself already in the regular water area right now. I'm just kind of making sure that I have enough of my highlight type areas or the water areas that I feel should be on the lighter side. And again, I don't have much paint on my brush. I'm using like a little bit of a dry brush technique so I can get this vibrancy or lightness that I want, because I feel that it would have quite a bit of lightness to it, but I still am carrying those sky colors into it. And then I just making sure I have enough, maybe a little bit more coming in through here, and maybe a touch more of that orange. And again, adjust it to whatever is your visual preference. This is one of those steps that I do feel that it benefits you to walk away and look at it from a distance, because sometimes when you're sitting here this close, you might not see everything that you should be seeing. So get up, walk away. I'm going to put some of these sky colors, just kind of sprinkle them in a little bit as they're meeting the regular water. So these two areas should look like they're speaking with each other. So I'm just getting a little bit of my sky color in through here. Gonna add a couple of my waves coming crashing in. So this, I just added a bit more white to my brush, and they don't have to be really straight. They can be coming in at a side. Yeah, that looks pretty. Like they're kind of crashing in. And then I think I'm going to put a little bit more definition up into the area in through here. So again, it's really what your visual preference is. If you feel that you want that water to be a little bit lighter as it's coming in from the deep ocean, definitely put a little bit more white on your brush. But in order for it to look nice and natural, these areas have to talk to one another. So you want them to naturally kind of blend in with one another. Even if you've got a lot of blue in your deep dark ocean and you've got a lot of your sky colors down here, you can still get them to gradually blend in with one another. I want this to be a little bit darker back here, so I just added a bit more of my black and then maybe a touch more of my green. And again, that's just my own visual preference, and these are looking like they're talking together pretty good to me. I probably, when I shut off the camera for the next step, will step away from my painting, because again, it's really hard for me to see it this close. So it's the same for you too. So I will probably step away and see if there's any more little tweaking that I want to do. But we're going to be utilizing our medium or our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your water all nice and completed, you've got some nice highlighted kind of waves crashing in, and you've got this as bright as you want it to be to emulate what you see in the sky, we will be using our small brush, so you can get that out and get ready for the next step. All right, so I know that I said that we were going to use the small brush for the next step, but I really want you to have your chalk or whatever kind of writing utensil that you'll want. You could use a pencil, but I misspoke. I want us to use our chalk, because what we're going to do is we're going to be outlining our figure who is going to be flying the beautiful kite. So I'm going to be using my piece of chalk. I'm going to give you a couple of markers. I do just want to, again, forewarn you to have your canvas dry before this step. It'll be much easier to draw on dry paint than it will be to draw on wet paint. And I'm going to give you a couple of markers. Know that it doesn't need to look perfect at this point. We're just giving ourselves a basic shape for the body that we can color in. So at the bottom of your canvas, you're going to come over about halfway from the left or the right hand side and make yourself a bit of a mark somewhere in through there. You'll come to the left of that about 2.5 inches, make yourself another mark somewhere in through there. Then you're going to go between those two and come straight up. So this is going to be the top of the head. It'll be a little bit to the left of the center of your canvas and a little bit to the right of where you made that mark for that other, the other mark. It's going to be the top of the head. So we're going to make ourselves a small circle that's going to end up a little bit shy of your horizon line. So a little bit shy of your horizon line, just make yourself an oval type kind of circle in through there. Then what we're going to do is just kind of make ourselves a little tiny neck in through there. These are going to be representative of the legs. And so we need to give ourselves a torso in through here. So the torso is going to be a little bit wider than the head. So I'm not terribly concerned about perfect shoulders or anything like that at this point. I'm just going to bring myself a horizontal line with a little bit of an arc that's going to be a touch wider than the head. And then I'm going to bring it down on the right hand side and bring it down on the left hand side. And it's going to come down to, I have mine right about here. So this is maybe about 2.5 inches up from the bottom of my canvas. So that's where I'm starting. This is going to represent where the rear end is going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump this left hand side out just a little bit, and I'm going to make myself a diagonal line that hovers over this marker a little bit. This is going to represent the right, or the front leg. I did it from this corner. I'm also doing another kind of diagonal mark. I'm going to overshoot my mark by just a little bit, the one that's at the bottom. This is going to represent the knee, and then I'm going to come back down like this. So this in essence is the thigh, and that's the front of the leg, and it's chalk, so if you need to make corrections, feel free to do so. Then what I'm going to do from the rear end area, this is going to be the other leg, and the knee has to be kind of about the same height. So I'm going to come up in this direction, and it doesn't have to be at the same angle. Maybe one of them is a little bit more of an angle than the other one. And then once I get in through here, I'm going to give myself this other diagonal mark. So just a little vote of confidence. If yours are not perfect, which the likelihood of them being perfect is pretty slim since we're using a big piece of chalk, they're going to be hidden for the most part under this beautiful beach dress. So don't worry if your proportions aren't exactly awesome at this point, because we're going to hide the whole thing. So you could color this in if you want to or not. It doesn't matter. You're going to be painting it in a minute anyways. And then what I've got to do is I've got to give her some arms that are going to hold up the kite. So I, a lot of times, will use my own body as a reference to where certain things need to go. So for me, if I'm lifting my arm up, my elbow lands about halfway up my head. So that's where I'm going to put hers. So if I have my elbow, we'll call this the elbow, it needs to come down to the torso, and it needs to come into the shoulder, something like this. So that gives me a pretty solid place where that elbow goes. And then based on me holding on to something up top, you know, my forearm is about, you know, the same length as that portion. So even if I just kind of take like this and go to here, it's not going to be up much higher. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a slight angle like this. And again, we're going to hide the hand underneath the kite anyway, so don't worry if it's not perfect. And then I have another hand holding up the other side of the kite. So again, just think of where it would come out the shoulder. So this would be somewhere in through here. My elbow would be somewhere behind the head. So I'm just going to give myself a little hand or a little wrist type area, almost coming out the top of the head. So somewhere in that vicinity would totally work. And then we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your outline that doesn't need to be perfect, now all set, you can put your chalk away, take out your small brush for real this time, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the body color or the skin color of our person. So I am just going to be using a color to me that represents my skin in the shadows. So it's going to look darker than mine. It's going to look like it's in the dusk. Like I got the best suntan I've ever had in all my life, which I usually just burn anyway. So how I'm going to do this, I'm using my small brush. I'm going to be using brown, orange, and white, And you can certainly tweak this color to whatever you'd like to, but I'm going to pre-mix myself again, a darker color that represents what I perceive to be my skin in the shadows. I'm going to use a touch of white in it because I know that white will help it to not be so see-through. I do know that this is going to get a little bit darker as it dries, so you can just plan for that. And I usually just use my own skin as reference, but you could use your own skin or your neighbor's skin or your, best friend's skin or whoever you'd like to. So you can certainly have fun with whatever tone that you'd like to go for that. And then once you've got the color that you want, all we're doing is we're coloring in our shape that we have. The chalk will most likely just bleed right into your paint, so don't worry if you have some areas that are a little bit lighter or a little bit darker than others. That's quite all right. If you feel that you want to reshape anything, feel free to do so, especially when you get down towards the rear end area. I'm gonna paint it as if I'm painting it's on our right, but it's going to be the leg that's closest to us first, because I know that that's the part that I would really see connects to the butt. So I'm going to do this. Oops, I'm going to make the butt grow a little bit and just make sure that I've got these kind of lined up and that they make sense to me. And this, of course, up here would be the thigh. So I've got my knee in through here, and then what would the thigh do? And again, you can use yourself as reference and just, use that and see if that makes sense to you. And then, of course, I can finish this leg up. This is going to be my knee, and it doesn't have to be your body shape, but you can certainly use your body as a reference to where certain things are placed. And if the limbs on your person end up shorter, that's going to make the figure look like a younger figure. If they are longer, it's going to make it look more of like an adult figure. So you can certainly tweak that. I think I can still see some of my chalk, which I will erase later. So if you're painting this and you're like, oh, I don't want to go as far as my chalk is, don't worry, just leave it, and then you can just erase it with water later. And then I'm going to do whatever I want for the torso area, and again, you could have it bump out, you could have it make it skinnier, whatever you want to do. I will also do this other leg down here too. So to me, the other leg might come in a little bit from the bum, so I think I'm going to just bring this in just a little bit like this, and then put my knee on. And again, this is just, it gives you a good, the chalk allows you to make these adjustments on the fly. So if you're going ahead painting and you're saying, that doesn't make too much sense to me, you can certainly make any adjustments. And then I have the back of the leg in through here, and it's going right off my canvas. I think I had it a little bit too wide at the bottom with my chalk, so I can certainly just adjust that. Maybe this is going to be a little wider to make up for the wide torso area that I had. And again, just make them make sense. So you might have to make one a little bit more narrow or wider than the other. Just kind of do whatever makes the most sense to you. And again, if it goes wrong, we're hiding it with a great dress. So this is just gives us the proper movement of the dress that's going to be on top of it. So we're really not going for this to look photorealistic underneath here. We're just trying to give a proper shape, so when we put the dress on, the dress will make sense. So I've got the shoulder in through here, and again, what would my shoulder do? So it ends up kind of merging with the side of my body in through there, the side of my body. This is not necessarily me. It's just it's just how I got my reference for the placement. And then I'm just going up that arm. And again, if you have a little bit of chalk still showing, don't worry about it. I've got the forearm in through here, maybe a little wider. And again, depending on the angle, this might, You know, the arm might look a little bit different depending on whatever angle that you're looking at. Maybe yours is a little bit wider or more narrow. And then I've got my head. I'm just coloring it in the skin color. We're going to be giving it different color hair. But again, this is so I have the shape to put the hair on with. We're not going to see a face or anything like that. I just want to give myself some kind of place to start. And then I have my other arm that is just going to be on the other side of the head, and then it just kind of comes up like this. And then we are going to be, let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? We're actually going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat of your kite flying person on here, you can wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we are doing the first layer on our beautiful kite. So I'm going to use my small brush and I'm going to be using white paint. So I'm going to be using this as what I like to refer to as my primer coat. I want the colors on my kite to be really, really vibrant. And I know that with acrylic paint can tend to be see-through. So with a white base to the kite colors, they're going to be as vibrant as they can be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of markers. You can certainly make yourself whatever style kite that you would like to. I'm going for a, I don't know, a bird-like triangle type diamond-shaped kite, and I want it to look like this person is just kind of running with it and ready to release it at any second, so it's going to have a lot of movement to it. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers and then we'll just connect those dots, and by the time we're done we'll have a fun flowy shape to our kite. So I have my small brush, I have white paint. The first marker that I'm going to do is right about in this vicinity. So if this is about halfway in your canvas, you can come over maybe about 2 inches and down about 2 inches and give yourself a little bit of a marker. Mine's going to be a little bit tough to see in the lighter areas, but once I start drawing the lines, you'll see it. And then I'm going to make myself one right about here. So this is maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches from the right hand side and almost about halfway between here and my land, or maybe about 1/3 of the way. So somewhere in through there. Then I'm going to come directly over to the left hand side. Just travel from this dot all the way left, 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 left until you get about, I would say about 1/4 of the way away from the edge, or maybe about 4 or 5 inches away from the edge, and go up just a little bit. So this dot is a tiny bit higher than that one, and it's maybe, you know, 1/4 or 1/5 of the way over your canvas from the left hand side. Then what I'm going to do is I am going to, my other markers are in essence the hands, so I'm going to connect these top dots right now. So I'm going to take my white paint and I'm going to connect this one to here with a little bit of an inward arcing type motion. So something like that. Again, I want my kite to have a whole lot of movement to it. And then when I connect this one to here, I'm going to have almost like a wavy ripple type happening to it. So I'm going to start in through here and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a wave, and then it's going to come down and meet this end, something like that. Now I'm going to connect these two ends to my hands. I want my hands to be covered because I don't want to paint hands. So we're gonna hide them underneath our kite, because a lot of these kites have like a bar that you hold on to as you're running, and when you're ready to let go, you let go of the bar. So we're gonna have her hands hiding underneath the bar. So I'm gonna take from her hand and I'm gonna do a scooping kind of motion up into here, or you can do from the corner to her hand, whatever works for you. So I'm gonna go from here, and then I'm keeping my eye on the prize, which is her hand. So I'm gonna come over in this vicinity and then just give myself a nice scoop and just meet that hand somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm coming from here, keeping my eye on the prize, which is this other hand, and we're coming at a different angle, so it's going to look a bit different. This side is going to look different than the other side. So I'm going to come almost all the way over to the hand before I really start scooping it down into the hand. So something like that. And then I'm going to make myself what's going to be almost like a window kind of hole in the middle of the kite. So this is going to be about directly up from the hands. I'm going to start it somewhere in through here, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a distorted kind of triangle type look, as if we're seeing it from the side or from a windy kind of perspective, something like this. And then once I've got this little window here, then I'm going to be coloring in this entire area. We're going to put some little streamers coming off of the back of it into the wind. But first I'm just going to kind of color this in with white paint, and you don't need any fancy brush stroke. You can just load up your brush, get the whole thing covered in with white, even if it doesn't cover it 100%, and you can still detect some of the sky colors underneath it. That's okay, because by the time we put all of those vibrant colors on top of it, you're not going to be able to detect the sky colors underneath. Because again, I know that my paint tends to be a little bit more see-through because I am using the student grade paint, but I love it for the consistency of it and the way that I can do my layers and all the effects that I can get from it. So I like doing these layers, and when it ends up being a little see-through when I don't necessarily need it to be, that's all right by me. And then again, I'm just kind of getting this whole area painted with the white paint so I can use that as my primer coat. I'm leaving this little peekaboo window I think that adds some extra lift or something to the kites. There's so many different designs. I went kite flying with my dad a couple of years ago, and it's amazing the different styles that they have out there. So you can really use your own creative juices to make this into whatever you want. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to start doing some streamers coming off of them. So I'm going to have a couple coming off these corners. So again, I'm just using white paint, and I'm making it as if the wind is really just kind of taking them, and they can be as long as you want or as short as you want. I'm going to have some coming off of here. So this is really, I don't want it to cover her head. So I'm going to take my time here and just kind of strategically plan these out. So this one I'm going to have coming over the head, something like that. And then I'm not going to have any more down on that right hand side, but I do want this center area to really take on a lot of movement. So I'm going to have a big thick one kind of coming in this center area that will, in essence, pretty much steer the whole ship, I'm thinking. And I'm going to bring it down into the water, or, you know, hitting the water a bit. And then maybe I'll have another one coming out in through here. And again, you can have fun with these. Yours don't have to be exactly like mine. They can be all different types of sizes and shapes, and they don't have to trail off at the end like I have mine trailing off at the end. You can have yours overlapping one another. You can have little ones coming out. We're going to be, when we put on the colors, you'll see that the color pattern can be really distinct, or it could be have all kinds of variations to it. So you can certainly utilize your creative juices for it. I think that's about all I'm going to do. I think I was going to do maybe a couple more, but I'm thinking that this looks pretty good. Maybe one more in through there. And then we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat of your beautiful flying kite, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting the dress on our figure. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using mostly white, but I may also use a little bit of brown and a little bit of black just to get my white to not be so vibrant, because I don't want this to be as bright as my kite. I want it to look like it's in the shadows or in dusk, but I do want to have brighter areas to it. So I'm going to use water so it's see-through in some of the areas. so it looks like it's flowy and we can still see some of her skin under there. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to pre-mix myself a very light gray. So I've got some white and I'm going to go just a touch of brown and a touch of black. I just want it to be slightly darker than white. It doesn't have to be so terribly dark. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of water. So it's more on the translucent side. I can keep adding layers to it to get it to be less translucent, but I want it to be pretty see-through to start so I can have a good place to go with this. So I'm going to have it looking like kind of a halter type dress. So I'm going to have it coming between the arm and the neck, and it's going to come right down into this area in through here. I'm going to have it scooping around the other side. Most of this is going to be covered by her beautiful long locks of hair. So if yours doesn't end up perfect, no worries. This is just intended to give you, again, some semblance. And so if some of the hair doesn't cover it 100%, you'll have the opportunity to have the body covered. And then of course you could reshape this body. If you wanted her to have a little chest, you could give her a little chest, but I'm just bringing this right down to the waist area, and you can probably detect that you can see some of the skin color underneath it, which is my intent. I want it to be on the more see-through side, and I'm bringing this right down to the waist. This is where I feel that the dress would start kind of flowing outward. So I'm going to, or the dress that I am designing is going to start flowing outward right around the waist. So I'm going to have it coming on this left-hand side. I want it to be about as low as the calf muscle, and I'm going to have it coming out in through here. So I've got it coming, flowing down like the rear end, and then it's just going to kind of flow in an outward, natural kind of ripply fashion out on that left-hand side. I'm going to do the same exercise on the front area on this right-hand side. So I feel it would start coming out about the waist, which to me would be about here. And then I'm going to have it laying on top of my leg, so something like this. And it's going to come down just past that knee in through here. So now I'm going to connect this to over here, and I want it to be pretty flowy with a lot of movement. So I'm going to start it in through here, and then I'm going to bring this down and maybe just give it some pretty ripples along here, and we'll get this all to make sense and have a lot of movement by the time we're done. So now that I've got the shape of it, now as I begin to color it in with my watered down white paint, I'm putting my brush strokes in the direction that I feel the fabric would be flowing or falling. So I've got this coming over in through here, and it's coming down from the waist. So I'm just giving myself these directional type paint strokes. And if you go outside your line a little bit like I did, don't worry about it, just kind of color it in. And you can see, we can still see her skin underneath this this dress, which is exactly what I wanted to happen. And you can see some of the land and the beach area, which I think is super cool. And once I've got the, in essence, kind of see-through area, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop using so much water, and I'm going to use a little bit more white. So I'll use my gray mixture and a bit of white. And every time I have a bump up in my wave, that's going to have brighter paint to it. So I have a bump up in this wave here, so I'm going to add a bit more of that white paint, and this is going to give you the illusion of a ripple within that fabric. So this is just a kind of a quick, easy way to give you the illusion of this fabric in a flowy kind of way. And you can do the same when it comes over the rear end, you could add a bit more white into that. Again, I've got really long hair on my girl, so she's gonna have a lot of the rear end kind of covered, but you want this to look a little more natural too. So again, I've got white paint on my brush. I'm kind of trying to tackle these bumpy areas first, just so I can have my head clear when I go to the area around her body. But this is one of those steps, less is more. You just kind of build these layered areas in a slow fashion. Let that paint dry if you need to in between layers, so that way it you can easily just put another thin layer on top of it where it would make sense for you to do so, and you can maintain the integrity of this fabric looking translucent in areas. And if you want there to be more ripples, you can certainly just continue to add these lighter areas, and that's going to help again to sell the story that this is in fact fabric. Where it's bunched up a little bit more, that's where it's going to be less translucent. And I think I'm going to have more coming in this area just so we can disguise her body a little bit more. And so again, if you want that body disguised, you just make those areas a little bit less see-through, and that will help to get any of the areas of the body to be disguised. You could even put like a little belt around the waist. You could certainly feel free to make this as decorative as you'd like. You can design your own little beach dress. You could even put different colors on it if you wanted to. I'm going to put a little bit more white in through here because I feel that it would kind of bunch up on her leg in through here as she's lifting her leg. That's looking pretty good. And then we are going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful dress all nice and complete, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I am finishing the skin, the exposed skin. So this is going to be the two pieces of arms and just these little bottom parts of the legs. If you still have chalk around the edges, you can just take your small brush with a little bit of water. I noticed I still have a little bit of chalk on this leg over here, so the water on your chalk can certainly take care of it. But I'm going to use this small brush, and what I'm in essence going to use is a 1 or 2 shade lighter of whatever I used for the skin to just add a bit of a highlight. So I still have some of my skin color in through here. I'm just going to add a teeny tiny bit of white paint to it. I don't need much. I just want to give the illusion of form on her body. And again, I'm going to have a lot of hair that hides a whole bunch of this. So I've got my little bit lighter version, and I'm just giving maybe a shoulder, a little bit on her forearm. I'm not going all the way to the edges. I just want there to be the illusion of shape. So because of the time of day that the painting is emulating, by adding just a bit of a lighter color within the middle of that skin area, that's going to give it enough of a dimensional element to sell the story that it is three-dimensional. So I still just have a little bit of that lighter color on my brush, and I'm giving her a little highlight on her calf, and then I'll do the same thing over on this exposed skin in through here. And if you felt that you wanted to go lighter, feel free to do so. If you wanted any more definition with muscles or anything like that, you'll feel free to do so, but I, again, am not doing much at all. And then I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your bit of a highlight, if you needed to go into that original skin color just to make sure that you've got everything colored in, you could certainly pick up some of that and do whatever you need to for your adjusting. And then we'll use the same small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting ourselves a whole head of hair. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be making this hair, again, look like it's in the shadows, but I'm still gonna have some lighter pieces that might be highlighted from that, you know, beautiful dusk sky, and maybe she's got some little highlighted piece of golden hair or something, but I'm going to start really dark. I'm using my small brush. The colors that I'll be using for this step are black, brown, orange, yellow, and white. So no blue and green in her hair, which I suppose you could put in her hair if you'd like to, but I'm not going to put any in mine. So I'm using my small brush. I'm going to start with black and brown on my brush at the same time. And you could use a little bit of water too, so you could have flowing locks of hair, but for me, I'm just going to initially put this darker layer on to tell me where I want the whole head of hair. She's going to have really long, just flowy kind of wavy hair. So I definitely am going to start at the top just to kind of give myself an idea of where I want this. So it's going to come down her back, and then as I get past her shoulder, that's where I'm going to start having it kind of flip out just a little bit, as if the wind is taking her hair like it's taking the kite. And as I'm on her dress, I'm constantly thinking of her body shape as well. So her rear end is in through here, so the hair, if I want it that long, would possibly come and bump over that area of her rear end. And again, I want it to resemble the idea that it's being blown by the wind, or that she's running for, you know, to make sure her kite takes off well. I do not want to have to paint her face, so I am going to put hair coming down right in front of her face. So something like this will do the trick. Just strategically place your pieces of hair. You could cover part of her dress too in through here if it didn't work out quite as wonderful as you thought it would along her arm. You could certainly put, you know, just a couple of pieces coming over there, but I'm going to start curving this in through here. And when I do hair, especially this type of long flowy hair, I like to start dark, so that's why I'm using my darkest of my dark tones, and then I will work my way towards the lighter hair, and this way it will naturally give me a lot of dimension to the hair itself. And I'm constantly thinking of where this hair is coming from, so it has to fall naturally down her back, and it's got to fall naturally off of her head. But I also know that there's some wind involved, so I would probably have some pieces coming along the side as well that are just being blown by the wind. So again, right now I'm still just kind of using black and brown with a little bit of water on my brush just to get these little tiny pieces placed along the edges where I really want there to be a lot of movement and a lot of information as far as where the wind is taking her hair. And then once I've got it placed pretty solidly where I want the whole head of hair to go, and that I've got a nice dark base to it, what I can do is I can start building to the lighter colors. So you could simply just add a little bit of white to your brown and your black if you wanted to be more on the brownish side. You could use some of your orange type color. So I'm going to actually start with some orange, brown, and white. I might go with a little bit of yellow too. I haven't quite decided yet, but and I'm in essence kind of putting my highlight pieces on right now. So this is going to tell the viewer really where the direction of the hair is being blown and is curving or has movement to it. So I've got these little pieces coming off the front that trail into the back of the head, and then this little curve in through here really helps to sell that story. I think I am going to add a little bit of orange, and yellow, just to give it more of a golden look to it. And I haven't washed my brush. I'm really just kind of utilizing the dirty brush, which allows me to get these pieces to naturally look like they belong together. I might do a couple of little tiny pieces over here on the left side, as if maybe they've caught a little bit of the glow from that beautiful sky. And you can just keep adding little tiny specks of single pieces of hair. The brightest ones for me are going to be over on this right hand side, to just that they are catching, in my opinion, the most light. And you could make yours much bolder than mine. I think I'm going to put a couple of little tiny straggler pieces coming out over the face area in through here. You could have yours more wavy than mine. And you just kind of keep building these waves and these colors along her hair to whatever intensity that you want. And if you feel like you've gone too light or too bright, you can always just bring back some of that black and brown, and you can just kind of intermingle that in between the lighter pieces, and you can get it to go in whatever intensity that you want. So you can kind of keep tweaking this until you feel that you've got the right value and the right color and the right everything for it. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your head of hair all nice and complete, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to a super fun step, in my opinion, which is adding the colors to our kite. So I totally encourage you to be as creative as you want to. You can follow the pattern that I'm doing, or you can come up with your own pattern. It's totally up to you. What I'm going to be doing for this step is I'm going to be doing just base colors for all of my stripes or whatever I want to create for the design work. And then the next step will add little shadows and highlights to it. So I'm in essence just kind of doing flat colors right now. So I'm using my small brush. I'm going to be using phthalo green. I'll be using my orange, yellow, and blue. And you can mix yourself whatever colors you want. So for like the phthalo green, you could use it straight up as bright as that is, or you can mix it with a little white, really have at it and make whatever kind of colors that you would like. So I think for me, I'm going to do a little tip with this really bright green. And as you're creating this design work on it, keep in mind that the way that I have, if you follow the shape that I gave you on the actual kite itself, that each side is of a different, at a different angle, and it's fabric, so it can move. So if you, in your head, consider this as your center point, when you go to do your designs coming off of it, that will help guide you in making them into the proper areas. So I just did the point. Now I'm going to do this same color on these exterior little points. So I know that I'm going to have a colored piece for that little tassel thing coming off the end. So I'm just going to put a little sliver of green over here, and then a little sliver of green over on this corner. And then I'll kind of do that same thought process as I'm going through the whole thing. So I want a green area coming off of here as well. So I'm going to have it coming in through here, and then it's going to meet maybe about, I don't know, halfway or so up this stripe, or of this side, this right hand side. And wherever I have it land on this right side, I've got to try and find the opposing, the similar spot on the opposing side. So it can get a little tricky, and if you want it to have more movement, you can make these lines kind of curved, like I am doing in through here. So that's going to add to the movement of the kite itself by adding these curved lines. So I've got to find a similar spot on here. So I know that this area is about halfway between here and here. So I find halfway between here and here, I'm going to give myself a marker. So that's where that's going to go, and it's going to end up right here. So I'm going to keep the curve of the of what I'm creating the kite with. So I'm going to do something like that, and then I'll get this to meet my other area and then just color it in. So again, as I'm doing this, I do want the kite to look pretty symmetrical. You might find yourself wanting to do a different design pattern, but if you want the two sides of the kite to look like they belong together, you can just find those opposing spots on the other side. So I think I'm going to have a little piece or a sliver of a green little piece of fabric in through here, and then I would have to have one on the right side as well. So I think I'm going to have this one somewhere in here. Maybe this one's going to come underneath, and I might end up with a different number of little tassels on either side at this bottom area, and if I do, then so be it, but we'll see if I can kind of make that work. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick another color. So I think the next color that I'm going to do is yellow. So I'm just washing and drying my brush. I'm not going to do anything with my yellow. I'm just going to take the chrome yellow that was on my palette and use that. I think I'm going to have these two tassels coming off the end with just yellow, and because I have that beautiful white underneath, this is making these colors really nice and vibrant. I think I want this to travel up in through here, because this one I'm going to have coming up in through here like this. And again, I'm just using yellow right now. You could use yellow and white if you wanted to. I'm going to have a yellow area underneath these two green areas. So I'm going to do the same kind of exercise where I've got this marker on this right side, and then I'll find a similar spot on the left hand side and just try and get that pattern to make it look like it makes sense. All the while in my head I'm thinking that that's the center. The center should be lined up with the top center of the kite. And don't worry terribly about your edges at this point where they meet the outside edge of the kite, because we're going to be doing our shadow and highlights. There's little braces on the end of on the edges of your kite that we're going to be calling the shadows in a little while, so that will help to clean up the edges if you need to do anything along that line. So I'm using my yellow in through here. I'm going to have a big, let's see, where's this one going to go? I think this one's going to go right on top of this green one. And you could see when I did that green one, I skipped over this yellow part because the little tassel that I knew was going to be there, because I knew I would have a difficult time covering that tassel if I didn't do it. And this one, I think I'm going to have the opposing one somewhere in here. This might not have been the right one, but that's okay. It probably should have been the other one, but that's all right. Who's to know? Just you and I would know that. And then let's see what else. I think I'm going to have one coming in through here. So again, I'm going to keep this as my center. So if I want there to be a little bit of movement, I can add that bit of a curve to it. And then I'm just going to color this in. And then I think that's all I'm going to do for yellow. I'm going to use I think I'll use orange for the next color, and I'm not going to change it up at all. I'm just going to use the fluorescent orange. It is bright enough. I don't need to do anything to it to make it any brighter than it already is. So I think I'm going to do an orange stripe underneath my yellow stripe. So again, you can really have a whole bunch of fun with this and make it unique to the colors that you like. I'm choosing to do these colors because they complement my beach scene, and they complement the sky because they are in fact the same colors. They complement the water. So that's why I'm choosing to do these colors. But you know, maybe purple is your favorite color, so you choose to do a purple kite, or maybe you have, you know, a different idea of what you want to be your design work. So you can, again, just kind of create whatever pattern that you'd like. I think I'm going to have this center one come, decisions. I think I want this one to be this one right here. That was a tough decision. And I think I'm going to have a little sliver of another one on top of it. There we go. Yeah, the other one maybe will be blue or something. I'm going to bring this all the way down to the end, and then I think I'm going to have a couple more orange stripes up top. So right now I am using a good amount of paint on my brush. I'm not shy with the quantity of paint right now because I know that I'm going to have another step that will guide me and get rid of any little streakiness that I might have. So in through here, I think I'm going to have my orange stripe is going to meet this center area. So I'll do that there, and it's got to mimic the other side like that. And then, so this is definitely a little illusion on this side. So this one's just going to creep up. This one's going to have a bigger space because it is more, we're seeing it more, and this little sliver we won't see as much because of the angle of the fabric. So you might run into this little bit of a kind of an optical, you can say illusion or just confusion. So it could be an illusion confusion in this type of area. So that is kind of what I'm running into right now, but I will work it out. So, oh, you know what I might do? So it's not so confusing to my brain. I think I'll just bring this up like this and bring this in through here. Yeah, that works out much better for me. So that way I still have that little triangle area in the center, and then I can take this piece and go over here. That works out better for my brain. My brain was really going a little wackadoodle in that center area, like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do here? So we'll just make the orange completely surround that little interior area. And then I actually want some more orange, so I'm gonna do another area of it up in through here. Something, I think this is gonna go like this. And again, I am just kind of watching the curves of the other opposing sections, so that way I can kind of mimic how they've curved. So that's gonna again tell the viewer how the piece of fabric is curving or being lifted by the air. So you can do the same thing. And if yours don't line up perfectly and you find yourself in a bit of a optical illusion confusion as I did, you can certainly just, you know, improv, have fun with the color pattern, make it look whatever way that you want to, and just let it happen and let it work whatever way it needs to. So I've got this one additional section that I'm going to do over here, and I'm watching the curve to that, and this is going to come over to the left hand side. So I have a little section of another color I'm going to do in a minute. And again, once you've got these colors on here, you can certainly sit and fiddle with them and make them as clean as you want to. But I do want to, you know, give you that bit of information that we do have another step to these to the kite colored sections. So if yours aren't perfect at this point, don't sweat over it, because we're going to be adding some other information to it. And then I just have, let's see, one more color I think is I'm going to go with some blue. So I have my small brush. I'm going to be using blue paint, and I think I'm going to be coloring in the rest of my areas with blue. I might change or add a little bit darker of a color of this blue when I go to do my my last step on it, but I think I'm just going straight blue at this point, and I'm just finding my remaining areas that need to be colored in, and I'm coloring them in. It's hard to stay in the lines too. I just noticed myself going out of the lines a little bit. This is one of those steps where you quickly learn if you're one of those people who can or cannot color within the lines. So if you find yourself trailing, you know, going a little bit outside the lines a little bit, that's all right. We'll be able to clean it up in the next step. But a trick is also just add a touch of water to your paint. Again, that's going to make it a little bit more fluid, so you can have more slender lines, and it's a little bit easier to stay within your section. And again, you can always add more layers, but just being able to control the tip of your brush is sometimes the most difficult thing to do. So if your paint is on the more fluid side, that certainly helps to give you cleaner edges and allows you to control it just a little bit more. So I've got a couple of little sections left here, and again, I am just painting these last couple of sections in with blue paint, but you could have used a different color combination if you wanted to, or you can stick with my color choice. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So I'm just going to get these last little areas colored in, and then once I've got them colored in, I will wash and dry this brush for the next step. I just got this big old blue area in through here to finish on the right and on the left. And then again, I'll be using this same brush. So whenever you're ready, I'm just about ready here. And again, I'm using a good amount of paint, so even at times I was using a little bit of water, but in a big section like this, if you use a good amount of paint, you can get that long full stroke to it to get a nice coverage to it. And then here we go. I'm ready. I'm in the home stretch here. Of course, as I say that, I go outside of my lines a bit. That's all right. I'll be able to fix it when I do that final step. All right, I'm ready. Same brush, wash and dry it, and just get ready. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are finishing our kite. So this is gonna be done with a small brush, and it's gonna, in essence, be shadows and highlights and underlining or outlining certain things. We're just adding the bits of dimensional elements or details to the kite. A lot of kites have a brace around the edges to hold them sturdy to keep their shape. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with a dark color. You can really go with any dark color that you'd like, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take blue and brown, and I'm going to mix together some blue and brown, add a little bit of water to it. So, or you could go blue, brown, and black too, just something dark. It doesn't even have to be the same color as mine, as long as yours is some kind of dark color that you'll be able to see alongside the colors that you've chosen. And then, so I added a little bit of water, so my paint is nice and fluid. I'm going to add some brace marks. So the first one I'm going to add is from the tip down to the open kind of hole that we created, so something like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the inside of this little hole. So most of this is going to be outlined with this dark color, and that's going to give the stability. The only things that I'm not going to be outlining with this dark color are the tassel-y things that run or that are flying in the wind. So all these tassel-y things don't need this outline to them, but they may want a little shadow underneath them, which we could do with this darker color too. So right now I'm just kind of doing the braces around the edges. So I'm just kind of being mindful of where wet paint is, because I know that I have some wet paint around my canvas, and this certainly helps to clean up your edges along the sides of the kite. So if you had any areas that were not, you know, perfectly executed, you can utilize this step to get those to be nice and clean along the edges. And then I'm going to utilize this same dark color. I think I want a couple of dark areas in through here. So this is just adding a little bit of a concave kind of shadow in through this section in through here. And then I'll use it for maybe a couple of shadows underneath the tassels. So I can use this darker color just to add these bits of dimensional shadows underneath these some of these tassels that are flapping in the wind. So you can, you know, if blue isn't the dark blue isn't the right color for you, you could certainly add just brown or any other color that you would like. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to do the highlights. So the highlights are in essence going to be mostly white, and they are going to add the bump in the fabric, but I will also utilize in each section the original color as well. So if I'm going to do, let's say, my green, I'm going to pick up some white. My bump for me, I'd have like a bump in through here and maybe a bump in through here and a bump in through here. So my white is going to go in the bump area, or the part that puffs out the most, and then I picked up a little bit of my original green, and then I just get it to blend in. So you're looking to have a bright spot where the fabric bumps out the most. So you could just get away with putting both colors on your brush at the same time and adding the white along with whatever that original color was. Maybe I've got a little bit in through here. And if you need a second layer on any paint, even if it's not in the highlighted area, now's the time to do that as well. I can add a bit of a highlight on, I'm still working on my green areas. Wherever I feel that that fabric would be bumping out the most, I could add a bit of white with that original green, and that's going to get that area to pop out just a little bit more. So that looks good to me on my green area. So I'm going to wash and dry my little brush and just go on to the next section. So you can choose whatever color you want. I think I'll go to my yellow next. So again, I have my brightest area in through here. I think this would be a little light in through there. And once I've got the bright area, then I just pick up a little bit of the original color to get it to blend in. And you can just kind of keep tweaking that until you feel like you've got it. This one, I think I would have a bright area in through there. And again, it might just be white. You might only need white to accomplish these highlights. So you could just put a little white in that area and then just fade it out. And if that works for you, then that's all you need to do. But sometimes you need that second layer in the neighboring areas, or you need to pick up that original color just so you can get it to blend a little bit more. So whatever you feel that you need to do, I'm going to put a little bit of white on my brush to get the highlights on the yellow ribbon pieces in through here. And I have a little trouble spot that's a little see-through in through here, so I'm just going to make sure I add a little bit more white. If you have any areas that are a little see-through, sometimes you can just utilize that white to help make it so it's less translucent. And then once I've got my yellow sections on, I'm going to go ahead and wash and dry my brush and just move on to my orange sections. So I just kind of keep repeating this same step. I've got my bright area in through here, and again, if you can get away with just adding the white and getting it to fade out into the neighboring section of color, that would be fine. But for me, I have a feeling that I need to add a little bit more of my orange just to make sure that it blends in well. And this again might be one of those steps that you get on the first shot, or you've got to kind of sit and tweak it until you feel that you've accomplished the look that you were going for. So you can just kind of play with it and just think highlights are going to be where it is the brightest and where it's bumping out the most. And then the shadowy or the darker areas are going to be where that fabric kind of dips down a little bit. So I've got my bright here, and this one looks like it's going to have a little bright in through here and maybe over in through here. And then I just pick up my orange and just kind of fill in the blanks and make sure that it blends well together. And then I just have my little blue sections left. I think this one I need a light spot up in through there too. And just getting this to blend in with the neighboring orange. Sometimes that can be the most challenging part too, getting your highlight areas to blend in with the original color of that section. So sometimes that takes a bit to, you know, get your brush used to what you want it to do. Oh, I got these little orange areas in through here too that I want to tackle, and then my orange over on my little, looks like a tail feather. This does kind of resemble like a bird of sorts in my opinion. So you can again just kind of have fun with these highlights and the I called them the shadowy areas, but those little brace pieces. And then I just have my my blue section, so I'm going to go ahead and add some white paint to my brush, get my blue highlight areas in through here, and you can see as I cruise along I end up getting more comfortable with the quantity of paint on my brush. Sometimes you start out with a little bit of paint and then you can end up being comfortable and just continuing to add more paint and getting these highlights and shadows to work as they're drying. I can get them to blend in with those neighboring areas to get it to make sense. So again, I'm just going for a light area. Whoops, that one went into my orange area a little bit. Just getting these blue areas and making sure that I have good coverage throughout that particular area. And you can just kind of keep tweaking it until you feel that you've got the proper highlight and shadow that makes sense for you. And I'm just going to add a little bit more blue to my brush to get these two sections to meet nicely and to blend nicely. So this will make my kite look like it's got a couple of ripples over on one side and then one solid ripple on the right side. So that's a great way to just kind of add the movement to a piece of fabric, is just to continue to add the high points and low points so they look like there's movement to it. And then I've just got this one over here and then my little tassels, and then we have one tiny little step left to go, which will be with our small brush. So once you've got your beautiful highlights and your braces and whatever else little details you feel that you might need to do to your kite, you can wash and dry this little brush. It's looking good to me. And get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I'm going to be signing mine with my small brush. I'm going to go in the bottom right corner, and I am using black paint. You could certainly use any color that you want. And I usually do my initials. You could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like to use as your identifying mark. It is totally up to you. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very warm, summer-inspired image. And I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.